You know, in real estate, some deals just sound way too good to be true. But what if I told you about one that could supposedly land you a six-figure profit and a massive piece of land, basically for free? Well, today, we're going to unpack a story that promises exactly that. But as you'll see, it reveals a much more important lesson. Let's dive in. I mean, just look at that promise. Make 100 grand and get 57 acres of land for free. Imagine pulling that off. $100,000 in your pocket and a huge plot of land to your name, all without costing you a single dime. It sounds like the absolute perfect deal, right? So let's see exactly how this was supposedly done. All right, let's break down the numbers, because on the surface, they're incredibly compelling. We're going to walk through the purchase, the sale, and the final outcome just as it was presented. And honestly, it looks like a total masterstroke. So step one, an investor scoops up a house that sits on a really large parcel of land. The total price for the whole shebang, the home and all that acreage, was just $115,000. A pretty low barrier to entry, all things considered. Okay, then comes step two. The investor immediately turns around and sells. But not everything. They sell just the house, along with a smaller chunk of the land. And the sale price for that? $215,000. You can already see a huge profit starting to take shape here. And here it is. This is the kicker. After selling the house and some land for a big profit, the investor is still holding on to 57 acres. This is that free part of the equation we were talking about. They've made their money back and then some, and they're left with this massive asset. It sounds wild. So let's just put it all together. The whole property was bought for $115K. The house with 30 acres was sold for $215K. That leaves a $100,000 cash difference and 57 acres of land supposedly owned free and clear. On paper, this is an absolute, undeniable home run.
But this is where the story takes a pretty sharp turn. We've seen the flashy numbers, the exciting outcome, but what about the process that actually got us here? It's time to step back from that amazing result and maybe look at this deal with a more critical eye.
And this is the question you just have to ask, right? Whenever a deal looks this perfect, is it possible we aren't seeing the entire picture? Are there some big pieces missing from this puzzle? And this slide right here, this is the whole point. Everything we've talked about so far, the purchase price, the sale price, the land that was kept, that's it. That is literally all the information the source provides, no other details. And that huge information gap, well, that's where the real lesson actually begins. But hey, just because the information is limited doesn't mean it's useless. We can still analyze what we have and, more importantly, figure out what it implies. So let's start deconstructing this supposedly perfect deal. First off, that big, shiny $100,000 figure, it's really important to understand that this is gross profit. All it is the sale price minus the purchase price. It doesn't account for any expenses, any fees, any costs that come with buying, holding, or selling the property. So the key takeaway here is this is not the final take-home number, not even close.
Now, the source mentioned the property was sold with low down, easy monthly payments. This is a huge clue. It basically screams that this was a seller finance deal. What does that mean? It means the seller didn't get a check for 215 grand. Nope, they got a small down payment and then they essentially became the bank, collecting monthly payments and, this is crucial, taking on all of the risk if the buyer suddenly stops paying.
And this right here brings us to the absolute core of this explainer. The genius here isn't necessarily the financial trick itself. It's the lesson it teaches us about how to analyze any opportunity. The real strategy is knowing what questions to ask. Just let that sink in for a second. The most powerful tool you have isn't your money, it's your curiosity. It's the ability to look past those exciting headline numbers and start asking the tough, detailed questions that reveal the true nature of a deal, all its risks, its hidden costs, and its actual real-world potential. So, what questions should we be asking here? Well, how about holding costs? You know, taxes, insurance, maintenance, for the whole time they owned it. How long did this thing even sit on the market? And with that seller financing, what's the plan if the buyer just decides to stop paying? What about closing costs and realtor commissions for both the purchase and the sale? And maybe the biggest question of all, what's the actual condition of that free land? Is it a beautiful pasture or is it an unusable swamp? Every single one of these questions completely changes the math on this deal. This is the ultimate takeaway. It all boils down to this. An on-paper gain of 100 grand makes for a great story, but it's just an idea. It only becomes real, actual profit after all the expenses are paid, all the risks have been managed, and that cold, hard cash is finally in the bank.
So we're going to leave you with this. This wasn't just about some clever real estate deal. It was about a framework for thinking. The lesson isn't to be cynical, it's to be smart, to be critical. So the next time you're presented with one of those can't-miss opportunities, remember this. What vital information might be missing, and what questions are you going to ask to find it?